I'm Steve. Welcome to another adventure. And this time we're going to be exploring Clan Sutherland. Welcome.
In the far north of Scotland, a single family came to control one of the largest estates in Europe. Across these lands, castles rose, communities disappeared, and the Highlands were changed forever. This is the story of Clan Sutherland. Good morning and welcome to the northeast of Scotland. I'm Steve from Scott in the Sky, and we're here to talk about the Sutherland clan. And what better place to start than the seat of power for the clan chiefs, Dunrobin Castle, which is over 700 years old. Located on the east coast of Sutherland, has been the seat of Earls and Dukes of Sutherland for over 700 years. The earliest parts date back to the 13th century, while much of the current structure was redesigned in the 19th century by Sir Charles Barry. Unlike many Highland castles that eventually fell into ruin, Dunrobin remained continuously occupied by the Sutherland family for centuries, allowing it to evolve gradually rather than being abandoned or rebuilt. The castle's position beside the Moray Firth was strategically important, providing access to coastal transport routes long before modern roads connected the Highlands. In the 18th century, improvements to roads and infrastructure across Sutherland increased Dunrobin's role as the operational centre of the estate. Inside the castle, collections gathered by the Sutherland family reflected the wider interests of Victorian aristocratic society, including hunting trophies and archaeological artefacts. During the medieval era, the Sutherland clan rose to power. They became one of the most influential clans in the north of Scotland. They had a lot of power and influence over the rival clan, the Mackays, to the west. For centuries, Clan Sutherland was not the only power in the far north of Scotland. To the northwest, the Mackays controlled large parts of Strathnaver and neighbouring territories, becoming one of Sutherland's main Highland rivals. Conflict between the two clans shaped much of the region during the late medieval period, particularly as both families competed for land, influence, and authority in the north. What is clear is that rivalry between the Sutherlands and Mackays remained a defining feature of Northern Highland politics for generations. Over time, however, the nature of power in the Highlands began to change. Clan rivalries gradually gave way to estate management, land reform, and economic restructuring. By the 19th century, the Sutherland family had become one of the largest landowners in Europe, with their influence centred around Dunrobin Castle and the surrounding estate. Set above Golspie at the top of Ben Braggie, we can see why this location was chosen for the first Duke of Sutherland's statue. As you can see, overlooking Golspie and his territory on yet another beautiful Scottish afternoon. High above Golspie stands the statue of George Granville Levison Gower, erected in 1837. Visible across much of the surrounding landscape, the monument symbolises the scale of Sutherland influence during this period, but it also reflects the controversy of the era. The Duke became closely associated with the Highland Clearances, during which many inland communities were reorganised or removed as estates shifted towards large-scale sheep farming. Some resettled communities faced even harsher realities. Places like Badby, located on exposed coastal cliffs, offered little protection from the elements. Strong winds were constant. The land was difficult to work. Daily life became a struggle against the environment. Today, interpretations of that period remain deeply divided. Some view the changes as part of a wider economic modernisation taking place across Britain. Others see them as a profound social displacement that reshaped the Highlands forever. Badby stands as a reminder that relocation did not always mean recovery. For many, it meant a different kind of hardship. From the slopes of Ben Braggie, the village of Golspie stretches out below. Originally developed as an estate village connected to Dunrobin Castle, Golspie became part of this wider transformation.
During the 1800s, when the Highland Clearances were in full swing, a lot of the inland tenants were relocated to small coastal villages like this one that we're in today, Golspie.
As inland populations were relocated toward the coast, villages like this took on new importance within the changing structure of Highland society. The move to Golspie and other seaside towns in the Highlands represented a massive shift in the change of attitude and style of living that we saw here previously in the Highlands. By the 19th century, the Highlands were changing rapidly. Traditional clan structures had weakened, and places like Helmsdale began developing in very different ways from the old Highland townships. Positioned along the east coast of Sutherland, Helmsdale grew into an important fishing and transport settlement, connecting the region more closely to the wider economy of Scotland. The harbour became central to local industry, supporting trade, fishing, and travel along the coast. In 1868, the discovery of gold in the nearby Kildonan Hills briefly transformed the area again, triggering what became known as Scotland's Gold Rush. Prospectors travelled from across the country hoping to find fortune in the rivers of Sutherland. Although the rush was short-lived, it reflected a wider shift taking place across the Highlands. The region was no longer defined purely by clan territories and agriculture. Industry, infrastructure, and economic development were beginning to reshape places like Helmsdale and Golspie, connecting Sutherland to a changing modern world. By the end of the 19th century, the Highlands had entered a very different world from the one that Clan Sutherland first emerged from centuries earlier. The age of clan warfare had passed. Estate power had weakened. Railways, roads, tourism, industry, and immigration had transformed life across the north of Scotland. But while the Highlands changed around it, the legacy of Clan Sutherland never fully disappeared. Today, the clan survives less as a political power and more as part of the cultural identity of the Highlands themselves. Its history remains tied to the castles, estates, coastlines, and landscapes that still define this region, and perhaps nowhere reflects that connection more clearly than Loch Fleet. Loch Fleet offers a final perspective on the connection between landscape and history. Once, these landscapes were shaped by clan influence, estate control, industry, movement, and survival. Now, much of the Highlands is defined by heritage, conservation, tourism, and memory. The power structures that once dominated the region had faded, but the landscape remains. And across Sutherland, the past still feels close. Not only in the castles or ruins, but in the roads that cross the glens, the villages along the coast, and the silence of the open land itself. The story of Clan Sutherland is ultimately more than the story of one family. It is the story of how the Highlands changed, and how those changes continue to shape the region today. Because here in the far north of Scotland, history was never left behind. It became part of the landscape. This is Sutherland.